Hello and welcome to Postgres FM, a weekly show about all things PostgreSQL. I'm Michael, founder of PG Mustard, and this is my co-host Nikolai, founder of Postgres AI. Hey Nikolai, what are we talking about this week?
Hi Michael, this is episode number 26, and it means since we didn't miss any week, it means that, and since each year has roughly 52 weeks, it means that it's exactly half a year without doing podcast every week. How good is that?
Yeah,
it's pretty good, right? When we started, of course, my goal was not to miss any weeks, because when you start missing weeks, then you start missing 2 weeks, and it's kind of. But we have good, steady progress in this term. So we started in June, I guess, or in July.
I think it was the end of. Was it beginning of July? I'm not 100% sure. We can check.
Well, we have a new year in a couple of days, right? Yeah. So it means that we started in June.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to you. Thank you, and thanks to everybody
Likewise.
who has been giving us encouragement and feedback to keep going.
Yeah, this is our fuel, definitely. So. And we receive it every week, which is very encouraging. So, this was just some side note, but since it's the end of the year, let's maybe wrap up some summary of the year in terms of Postgres ecosystem and broader community. And it will be probably a very opinionated list, not ideal. We don't have the goal to have ideal list, and it's just something which, for example, I remember and consider important, interesting, entertaining, and so on. So just how will we name it? Postgres 2022? Most interesting facts and events. Right. Okay, I have a list of 5 items. You have also a few items to add. Let's start from my list because it's my turn to define the topic. And I will start from the observation that Postgres ecosystem has very strong startups, and despite of issues with global market, fundraising and so on, this year showed very, very good results in terms of money raised by Postgres and Postgres-related startups, and also new startups appeared. And I would mention, I would start from Ivan here. They are not strictly like Postgres only thing, but Postgres only company, of course. But they started, as I know, from delivering services, first of all, Postgres and Kafka, then extended and so on. So they are quite strong in Postgres, and they actually previously in late 2021 they achieved $2 billion evaluation, and total raise this year achieved $420 million. It's quite impressive. And in February, 2 more companies reported that they raised more, and they had new rounds, and they achieved $1 billion evaluation. It was these 2 companies were Hasura and Timescale, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
And also we have a bunch of other companies who also raised a lot. For example, Supabase, and we have new startups. Very recent one is Hydra, right? Hydra. How to pronounce it?
I say the latter. I say Hydra.
Hydra,
but
because
I think
and interesting that also Neon, of course, had release this year. They didn't appear this year, but they had release this year, and we will talk about Neon in my different item also a little bit. And I like how these three startups, not Hasura, Supabase, Neon, and Hydra, they choose their style of value proposition. We are this, but open source, right? So Supabase is open source Firebase alternative, Neon is open source Aurora alternative, and Hydra is open source Snowflake alternative. And all of them are built based on Postgres. and this is super great. And this I think like in my opinion, this item in my list, this is most strongest, biggest, and most interesting because these achievements bring a lot of energy, not only money, but a lot of minds and a lot of new small projects, open source projects, and so on and so on. This is great. This shows how Postgres community grows and Postgres ecosystem grows, and this is new heights for Postgres ecosystem. But it also, I think, in my personal opinion, this also means that Postgres community is much bigger than Postgres project itself, because they are different companies, different organizations, different people, and Postgres is just in the center, right? But there are many things around, and they are growing in terms of business, in terms of people, user base, and so on. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really cool. It's an exciting time to be in the Postgres space for sure. Something I don't think I realized coming in, that a lot of this money would be around. A lot of them are hosting providers, which is super interesting. That seems to be where a lot of the, or at least that's how they're monetizing. It's kind of it's the cloud offering that they're charging money for. Hence, they can be open source in a lot of the cases. But it's really cool for Postgres Core as well. I think a lot of them are hiring maintainers or trying to hire people to work on Postgres Core. I think it's really healthy for it to be, for that group to be gradually populated by people from different backgrounds. I think in the past it's been a mixture of people in the community, but a lot of consultancies and a lot of industry, but not so much actual hosting providers contributing back to Postgres. And I think this year, with the companies you mentioned, but also even with the likes of Amazon hiring Postgres core team members, I think it's an exciting time, and hopefully that group will be able to achieve more with more resources behind them, with more money involved.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned. I think this is just the model that works best today to provide cloud offering like managed Postgres, but with some additions or very modified Postgres version. But it's just a model that works best today. And indeed, like RDS is I think still, of course, obvious leader here, but others try to be somehow different, to add something and so on, and they are interesting in various senses. Not all of them are just hosting. Like if you talk about Supabase or Timescale or Hasura, or they're not just Postgres, right? They provide Postgres plus something like time series extension. It's not only like it's extension, but it feels like a different database, maybe. I mean Timescale or Hasura and Supabase. They provide the API or GraphQL out like immediately. You have speeding up development. That's interesting. But indeed, yes, the model works best now. It's cloud offering. So we have a lot of options to choose from. If you want just Postgres database plus something, maybe. It's a headache right now already. So dozens of options to choose from, and it's you need to compare, and it will take time. But it's good. I think it also emphasizes my idea that Postgres is not just a single something. It's very very big and consisting of very different parts of Postgres, I mean, community ecosystem. It consists of many different things, and I see it as a huge bazaar. It's indeed open source. Like if you recall this Bazaar versus Cathedral from Richard Stallman, right? So Postgres is indeed a huge bazaar, and have a lot of players, and it's great. And also wanted to mention, if we mention RDS, for example. Also wanted to mention that this year I changed my mind about Google Cloud SQL, because previously they had only like 8 knobs, and it was my feeling about this offering, their offering of Postgres was it's quite weak. I cannot run serious project. This year, I completely changed my mind. Maybe because Hanno Crossing visited our Postgres TV episode. Like, it was great episode about vacuum. Can't recommend enough it. But also, like, it's improving, like, in terms of product, and also interesting. Okay, this was number one item in my list. Second item is actually our podcast started this year, right? So this is super important news for Postgres community and ecosystem, I guess. And also Postgres TV started to become more active as well. So we, first of all, those who don't maybe know, we also publish our episodes on YouTube. Sometimes it's more convenient, sometimes less, depends. But besides our wonderful podcast episodes, we also invite, I also invite on Postgres TV. Postgres TV is a YouTube channel. It exists for a few years, but this year it started to be much more active. And we invite various guests. Sometimes it's interview, sometimes it's to redo the talk, to record it and distribute it. It's called Postgres Open Talks, to provide good talks to wider audience. And also we have a good collection of playlists, like, for example, Postgres backups or Postgres replication, and so on and so on. And those are materials from other channels. And I think it's already approaching 500 videos about Postgres. So go check out postgres.tv. It will redirect you to YouTube, and you will see a lot of interesting stuff. Always to something to learn about. I actually, when I invite some guests, I learn a lot. This is also, I do it also, like, it's also a selfish goal. It's not only for community reasons to share, but also, like, I have like 1 hour. And I can dive into some topic as deep as possible, because the guest who is working in this area is maybe one of the best experts in this area in the world, right? So it's great. It's really great. So TV, FM, and maybe others also, they also publish materials online these days. Maybe COVID helped realize that online distribution, online events, they also matter, because not everyone can come to conference offline. So, and also you can stop listening, pause, and then return next day if you need to interrupt, right? So it's also much more convenient to consume information in such a way. Of course, offline events, they give benefits from live communication, but online events are also good, and recordings are also good. So this is item number 2. What do you think about it?
Yeah, really, I like it a lot. I think there's been, not just us, I think there's been a lot of people providing a lot of good Postgres content this year. And I wanted to I think the Postgres TV thing is worth a special shout out, that you do quite a few of the sessions live. So if people, they're often quite advanced topics, but if people have questions, if people want to be able to ask questions of those experts as well, they can join live and ask you them in the chat, and you'll pass those on. So those are quite a unique opportunity, I think, that you often don't get unless you can go in person to a conference. So that's really great. A couple of others that I wanted to give a shout out to were Tobias Petri, who's doing more beginner-friendly tips on Twitter, and his website SQL for Devs. That's really gained a lot of momentum this year. He's doing great. And Hussein Nasser, who has a really popular YouTube channel for backend developers. I'll link that up as well. I think he does fantastic work and explains concepts really simply. And then also wanted to give a shout out to the Postgres Weekly newsletter. I think still every week, I know it's been going quite a few years now, but every week they provide a really good newsletter for all kinds of topics around Postgres.
Yep, agree. Okay, item number 3, sharding. In the beginning of the year, I had strong impression like we definitely need sharding, and MySQL has Vitess. A lot of big companies who use MySQL, they use Vitess. Postgres lacks it, and and it was like we have Citus. I mean, Postgres ecosystem has Citus, but it's only partially available because open source community edition it's doesn't provide, for example, online resharding. It was before. I mean, I'm discussing what was in the beginning of the year, but this year changed it. First of all, Citus published everything as open source, like Microsoft published, because it's part of Microsoft now. And this is good news. So it's fully available as open source. Great. And a couple of young projects in this area started. First is SPQR, guys who I know, the Russian-speaking guys, and with very good experience. They try to build very simple yet powerful sharding system. It exists on GitHub. And then also some guy from San Francisco, I think, I don't remember the name, sorry, this system called PGCat. I'm subscribed to both projects, and they are very active in terms of development. So interesting to check them. One is in Go, SPQR is in Go, and PGCat is Rust. And they are adding almost every day something. This is super great to see. So, and PGCat actually, originally, the idea of sharding there was, PGCat was created, as I understand, as some proxy, like a replacement for PGBouncer probably, connection pooler, but sharding was there originally only like some very simple explicit sharding. You say I need to route to that node, that's it. But as I understand, later it became more complex and comprehensive and so on. So now it's already something interesting to if you need sharding. But of course, only few projects need sharding, because many companies showed you can grow to $1 billion evaluation having SaaS or e-commerce and still have one or few monolith, big Postgres databases, or split to services, big services. But at some point, any company, if it needs to grow a lot, it will need sharding. Some service will need to be sharded. So sharding is needed. It's just needed only to few users, but it's still needed. And we have some progress this year. It's not perfect, of course, like there is no obvious like default solution answering all questions, no. But there is a very good promising movement this year. Citus plus these two projects. Right? Agreed?
Yeah, I think PGCat sounds particularly exciting and really cool that it's the idea of putting it in a pooler with, I think it has also load balancing and failover support as well. That seems really smart to me, that you could put it in place and benefit from those features before you need sharding, and then make use of sharding later if and when you need it. That sounds very sensible to me.
Right, and this middleware should be very light, in my opinion, if you aim to work in OLTP context, because if you use, for example, Postgres there, it's also possible, but it's quite heavy, and it adds latency overhead. So of course, worth testing each particular case, but having some and Vitess, MySQL Vitess also has proxy layer. It's called Vitigate, and it's good if it's very light. The problem is how to support all Postgres syntax in this case, because when you start from zero, Postgres syntax is quite rich.
Yeah. A couple more things I want to mention on this front, actually. There was a really good Notion blog post. I'm not quite sure if it was the beginning of this year or a little bit earlier, but they implemented, I believe people refer to it as application side sharding. Not a great acronym. But
yeah. Well, it's I promote this approach, acronym. It's application level sharding is
much better,
less offensive, right?
But yeah, the Vitess stuff's super interesting, and I think this, for me, is actually a real threat to Postgres. Not necessarily on a technical level, but on a marketing level. I'm getting kind of flashbacks to the MongoDB days, where people would be offered kind of web scale, you're only a startup, but you'd never have to worry about scaling in the future. And suddenly we've actually got...
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that one node behaves 10 times worse than one node in Postgres. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. So, but people don't take that into account when they're starting up, and actually they don't notice because the performance when they have very few users is fine, and it is fine. The solution is fine, but I'm seeing startups that last year I would have expected to be on Postgres picking Vitess and MySQL because of PlanetScale have really nailed their marketing, and I think also have got some really good developer-friendly features. But mostly I think it's that same marketing angle as Mongo had. And Mongo, I think Postgres had a really good answer to with JSON-B support a little while later. And that, I think, was an excellent move. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do in the Postgres ecosystem kind of this time, and see if that... I think Postgres is built on better fundamentals than MySQL and has a lot of features that I love. So I'm really interested to see how we address that.
Yeah, and when you talk about some new startups which choose Vitess and MySQL, is it like very, very new startups, or is it some
very new this year or so? Yes.
Well, interesting. Well, okay, I don't see such startup. I see constant discussions about like, oh, it would be good to have Vitess. And Vitess, I think later last year, like a year ago, they announced that they don't have plans to work on Postgres support themselves, open to community contribution. But I don't, in my head, I don't see, maybe like I have some filters. I don't see companies who these days would choose MySQL without strong pressure from, I don't know who. Like it's strange, but I can imagine. Like if, for example, some CTO wants to be protected in terms of risks, to growth risks and how to handle growth, and for this CTO it doesn't matter that you can handle dozens or thousands of transactions per second using single simple cluster on modern software. Actually, in already hundreds of transactions. And when I say transactions, I don't mean read-only transactions. Of course, I mean like social media like traffic, like 90% are selects, right, or 80%, but others are writes, and you can handle perfectly. You can scale up to like you can handle 100,000 TPS or few 100,000 TPS, especially if you take, for example, modern EPYC processors from AMD, EPYC Milan, EPYC Rome as well. So Rome is previous generation, Milan. A lot of CPU power, like a lot of memory. So, and you run like 10 nodes in cluster, a lot of replicas. It can be very, very, very powerful. So you can postpone this case when you need to be sharded. And also microservices is like people sometimes choose microservices and postpone the need to shard their databases, right? Because databases become smaller. So yeah, I can imagine the reasons behind the choice to choose Vitess. But is it Vitess or PlanetScale, by the way? Speaking of managed services,
the startups I'm seeing are choosing PlanetScale. I don't even think they would know. They wouldn't necessarily know what Vitess was, I think.
It's different because, as I see, PlanetScale now has two value propositions combined. One is WebScale, PlanetScale sharding, and another is we will handle your changes without problem. They call it database branching, but it is not. And they provide you like ability to change schema and then have some similar to pull request, merge request concept, deploy request, so your colleagues review change, and then they run change online without downtime, and you don't need to spend efforts. This may be also a big motivator because in Postgres it's a big headache to avoid locking issues and so on.
This is what I meant by their developer-friendly features, and I think that's a similar value proposition that Mongo were offering back in the day as well.
Yeah, interesting. I think many Postgres companies, Postgres-related companies, also already working on this because, of course, yeah. So in this case, let's proceed to next item, number 4, and this is database branching is coming, right? So database branching is coming, and originally, I think last year, it was PlanetScale who started to use this term, and in my opinion, in the wrong direction, because they talked about branching schema only. So their branching, database branching, is just branching of schema. Recently, they added so-called data branching, which is something strange to me, but it's another story. But also, several other companies in Postgres ecosystem, because we are mostly interested in Postgres ecosystem, they started to talk about database branching. And for me, of course, this is very close. This is very close to home, right? Because my company develops database lab engine, which provides thin cloning. And actually, yesterday we released first alpha, which supports database branching. And branching is not cloning. There are differences. Another story, but I'm glad that many companies already think in this direction. They just want to work with, like, original need is to be able to work with databases in non-production with bigger size databases. Same as with Git. So you have independent database. You can have multiple independent databases, and you can experiment, develop, test, and so on. And cloning, which we had for a couple of years already, supported it. But branching allows you also to have some progress and commit it, like to have snapshot, and then share with your colleagues. They can branch from there, so it's like nested cloning already. With like nested cloning with commits, it's branching. This is what happens. If you look at Git, it's very close to it. And I would like to mention Neon, which released branching a few weeks ago, and it's also already publicly available. It works very well. I think they don't have commits yet, but I'm sure they are already thinking or working on it. It would be natural. But overall, this year, I think something like big movement in this direction started. So I predict in future few years, we will see a lot of progress in this area. So a lot of roadblocks in development and testing when we don't have big database to play with, when we need to develop or test, it will be like available to most teams, I think, in future, thanks to several companies who work on this area, including mine, of course. So
I've seen Superbase also mention branching in, I think maybe in one of their funding announcements.
In their roadmap, it exists, yes. Yeah.
And other Postgres related things in this area, I would have expected if Heroku had kept investing in there, or if they'd kept innovating on the lines that they were going, I think they would have done this.
They have a very good concept, so-called preview apps, right? It's basically environments which are deployed by request, explicit request, or inside CI/CD pipeline. So imagine for each branch, when you have Git push, CI/CD pipeline is running, and Heroku can deploy preview app on specific URL, and it has adjusted code from that branch. But there is always a problem what to do about databases, and naive approach is let's have one database for all. But there will be conflicts, of course, and if you want to delete something or to change schema especially, like a lot of conflicts. And database branching and thin cloning, it's exactly what can fill this idea to like complete state. So you can have preview apps or like environments as a service, not only in terms of code but also in terms of data, and that's exciting. Like it's super cool.
Yeah, and then it seems like the natural successor to Heroku Postgres is going to be Crunchy Bridge. They've got a lot of the same team involved, so I'd be interested to see if they're planning to do anything on this next year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't see anything about it in this direction yet, but maybe there's something I would like to know, to learn about it. Yeah, but anyway, I see. Okay, we are obviously several companies look in this direction. I hope finally this problem will be solved in the next 5 years, because it's something that should be solved, and it will unlock problems with, for example, some product manager wants to try it with data, right? Or you develop multiple things simultaneously, or you have multiple developers, or even if you want to optimize SQL to check performance. It's also a way to go, because without data, performance is different. So you cannot check your performance if you don't have enough data. And this unlocks many things like that. And eventually, it shifts a lot of stuff to left in terms of DevOps infinite loop. So it's definitely shift left testing, shift left activities. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, if anybody's new to our podcast, we do have an episode specifically on database branching, so we can
and about testing as well. We have 2 episodes, I think, right? So from time to time we touch this topic. This is my favorite topic, so I think we will continue doing this. I hope, right? Because there are interesting things about performance testing, for example. Okay. And my last item from my top 5 list is actually Postgres. We mentioned that in the beginning, Postgres is everywhere. All cloud vendors provide Postgres. And even Oracle started to provide managed Postgres service. So I knew about SAP, for example. It was a few years ago. So everyone, literally everyone. And for example, also interesting news, Google released new database, cloud database called AlloyDB, which has something from Postgres. Of course, it's can be considered as from Postgres family of database systems. And it's also super interesting. It has very interesting concepts to handle HTAP, hybrid transaction processing. So it's analytical and operational processing combining. They have a combination of row store, column store, and memory. So it's interesting. I haven't tried it yet. It's still on my to-do, but sounds super interesting. And overall, as I've said already, we have dozens of options to choose from. You need Postgres, but which one? So many, right? So choosing right option is not simple. It's not a trivial task. It's not like before. You download binaries or you download source code, compile, make install, and you're done, right? No. These days we have so many options. It's not only managed versus self-managed. If you say managed, so many options. And self-managed as well. There are many Kubernetes operators already, maybe 5 quite active projects, which all of them also interesting. More than 5, actually. More than 5. There are overviews of them. So if you want to self-manage, question will be old school self-manage or Kubernetes, right? Because there are many operators, and they bring things like backups, replication, monitoring out of the box. They eventually will compete with managed services, and managed services should be afraid of these operators, of course. Okay, so this is it with my list. Do you have something to add?
No, I think that was great. A couple of smaller things that probably don't warrant a big discussion, but I thought it was worth an extra shout out to the team behind the Postgres 15 features, all of the people that contributed to that. I know it was more of a kind of lots and lots of smaller features this year, but I really liked some of them.
Who mentions this? We all know every year we have new Postgres version. It's not a news already, right?
It's not news, but I don't.
There was Merge and other things, right?
Yeah, but I don't want to take it for granted either, right? Like it is every year that we do have a major version, but that's not necessarily guaranteed to happen forever. It's really cool that we do. Also, I think there's probably not so much for this past year, but I think next year I think we'll see some really interesting serverless, or I don't really like that word, but that seems to be the standard word. Use cases like if Neon. People can use Neon to send Postgres queries to in an almost serverless nature. I don't understand how it works, but that could be really cool, I think. And then the other interesting project I'm keeping an eye on is OrioleDB, which looks like it.
OrioleDB also has branching in the roadmap, and they have there's in GitHub there's a file like Markdown file describing the concepts, and they already have copy and write checkpoints. So if they implement database branching, it will be Postgres native database branching. So you don't need to think about separation of storage from compute. You don't need ZFS like we do. You have it inside Postgres. I'm super excited about this as well.
Yeah, very exciting. But yeah, I think you've done a great job of wrapping it up. I think it's been a really good year for Postgres, and looking forward to another one next year.
I agree. Thank you. Well, everyone, have a good new year, much better than this one, and see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Happy New Year. Bye now.